Hi, and welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This is the show all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager, a farmer, or a food producer selling at farmers markets, or just a curious farmers market shopper, this is the podcast for you. On today's episode of Tent Talk Podcast, our guest is Brent Preston, farmer and author of The New Farm, Our 10 Years on the Front Lines of the Good Food Revolution. On this episode, we chat with Brent about his experience finding his true calling in life and how he was able to build a sustainable organic farm that's also financially successful. We also tackle some big questions about the future of farming and rethinking our current food systems. Hi, I'm your host, Bridget Myers. I've spent years as an on-site farmers market manager, and I've done it all from pulling permits to popping tents.
I'm Kat Fields White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active farmers market manager, and founder of Intense Business and the Intense Conference.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead. I'm a hot sauce maker, farmers market vendor, and clipboard lady for the Intense Conference.
Welcome back to Tent Talk. Today we are joined by Brent Preston. Before he was a farmer, Brent worked as a human rights investigator, aid worker, election observer, and journalist on 4 continents. Then in 2003, Brent and his wife Gillian dropped their urban life in Toronto and moved their family to a rundown farm outside Creemore, Ontario. Since their big move, Brent and Gillian have built the New Farm into a thriving business, made a name for themselves in the restaurant scene in Canada, and have raised over $500,000 to make local organic food accessible in low-income communities. This last March, Brent's first book, The New Farm, Our 10 Years on the Front Lines of the Good Food Revolution, was published by Abrams Press. We're so excited because Brent will also be speaking at the 2019 Intense Conference. All right. Well, welcome so much, Brent, and thank you for being here. So we're just going to get right into it and give us a little background for our listeners. So what was your life like before you started the New Farm?
Well, immediately before my wife and I started the New Farm, we were living in downtown Toronto. We're sort of a normal urban professional family. I was a journalist with the national broadcaster here, and Gillian, my wife Gillian, was a management consultant, and we had 2 very young kids, and we lived right downtown in Toronto, so it was a very long way away from the farm.
Oh, so what pushed you to finally make the move out to start your own farm? What made that transition?
Well, it's actually sort of difficult to pinpoint in hindsight. I'm not quite sure what came over us, but what I always say that having 2 kids under 2 years old in a 2-bedroom apartment will make people do crazy things.
Yeah,
that is true.
Gillian grew up on a sheep farm in Vermont, so she grew up knowing, in a rural setting, and I've always been happiest sort of when I was outside the city. I used to guide canoe trips and spent lots of time in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. So at one point we just looked at each other and thought, we're not happy. This isn't, the rat race is killing us. We're stuck in this little tiny apartment with 2 kids and can never get outside. And we just took a flyer and bought a farm.
Wow.
Well, there you go. Well, I have small children, and we have a very small house here in San Diego, and I often dream of just moving us all out to like a ranch somewhere so they can run around. But usually I kind of get reined back in and say, oh no, the logistics of that are a little tough. So how was that like transition moving from urban to farmland? And you said that your wife kind of grew up on a farm, but how was your transition to adjusting to that? And how did the kids do when you guys moved out there?
Well, the kids were 1 and 33 years old, so they don't
easy, yeah.
They don't remember anything else, and they kids are super adaptable, and they have loved it from the start. But for me, it was great. The sort of move from urban to rural, in terms of our lifestyle and our friends and culturally, was really great and all positive. The transition to becoming farmers and learning how to farm, that was a lot rougher and took a lot longer.
Yeah, I would assume that kind of like getting some more space and being in the outdoors would be something so great, but learning like a brand new skill set and putting that stuff to work was probably a little tougher. But I know in your bio it says that farming is your true calling. So you ended up clearly really enjoying it and liking it. Did it seem like something that you were always meant to do?
Yeah, it does now, but it didn't necessarily right at the beginning. I think again, it was a long learning curve, and financially it was really rough and really stressful getting our farm business up and running. But the sort of craft of farming and the day-to-day routine of working on the land is something that I really love and loved from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I think that it was sort of a slow realization over a number of years that all of the things that originally kind of in the background motivated us to move to the farm in the beginning were really worthwhile. The desire to create community, the desire to do something proactive and hands-on to address climate change and to have a role in addressing all the environmental problems we see around us. The slow realization that food is so central to so many of the really big problems that we face as humanity. Mm-hmm. That's been really rewarding and makes, so I enjoy the day-to-day routine of farming, and I also really believe in the mission of farming and the importance of what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, your book gives such a beautifully detailed, you just want to cry along with you, view and story and narrative of just how really hard it was. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was impressive, too, that the two of you and Jillian both, really approached it understanding that it had to be a business and that you couldn't just farm. Either that was going to mean somebody had to keep a day job or it just wasn't going to work. So your annual meetings and your planning and really analyzing what you were doing to make sure that the farm was financially sustainable was really impressive to me. How much do you think a business background and kind of financial awareness contributed to the farm surviving and actually growing into a success financially?
Well, I think that what I always say to people is that profitability is not sufficient to have a meaningful and successful farm, but it's necessary. You have, that's one thing that you have to do. Mm-hmm. So for us, really, it was a couple of things. I took some time off immediately before we started farming and took a really intensive entrepreneurship course that taught sort of the basics of how to start your own business and how to run a small business. And it wasn't geared toward farming, which I think was crucially important. And it sort of gave us some of the base skills and the fundamental ideas on what was necessary to have a successful business of any kind. And then the other crucial thing is that neither Gillian or I wanted to work off farm. Our goal from the beginning was to have a farm that supported our family and that could employ both of us full time. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of farm couples, once one person's working off farm and you're relying on that income, it's really hard to give that up. And it's really easy. It's really easy to run a farm business that's not really viable unless you have that outside income. So that option wasn't really open to us because it's not what we wanted to do. So that really forced us to focus on the business side and to make sure we got the financial part right.
And you found some of that success in farmers markets, right? I mean, we have to ask that because we're a conference that aims at people who understand that direct marketing can be more financially sustainable than not. I know you expanded and kind of shifted over to restaurants in the end, but farmers markets were a part of your making sure that the farm could support itself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we that for our first 2 years, that was our only outlet. That's the only place we sold our food was in the Creemore Farmers Market. The little village of Creemore near our farm has a really wonderful market that's been going for a long time, a Saturday morning market. So for the first 2 years, that was our sole source of income. And then we were sold in the market for 5 summers. And it was absolutely essential to get our business off the ground and to get us started.
Because of the margins being different when you're selling direct versus selling wholesale, or I mean, how did that affect?
Well, it was a couple different things. The great thing about to me, especially for new farmers, is that the farmers market, there's no real threshold for entry. You can show up with 10 bunches of beets and 5 bunches of carrots and you're in business. You obviously you're going to want to go beyond that, but it's you can start really small in the farmers market. And also having that direct feedback from customers was crucially important in the beginning to be able to look your customers in the eye and know what they want, what they don't want, see how they react to different things, see how they react to the seasonality of what your farm is producing. And for us, it was incredibly important also for the non-financial parts of it, becoming part of this adopted community that we moved into as outsiders. Being in the farmers market totally changed that process of integrating into the community. And we met so many people. And I think it was really important for people in the community to be able to look at us and say, oh, you guys are new, but you're the farmers. You're the ones in the farmers market. We know who you are. We know what your role is. It showed that we were also really committed to the community.
Yeah, I'm sure that would be a really important thing, so the community's not like, who are these wacky people from the city who are moving into our town and trying to show us how to do it.
They're all right.
Yeah, like, again, coming back to the idea of profitability being necessary but not sufficient, there's lots of motivations for all your strategies on the farm, for what you grow and how you grow it and where you market it. And they're not all financial, and we gained a lot from the farmers. We gained a lot financially from the farmers market, but we also gained a lot of non-monetary returns that were just as important.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you ever consider maybe going to a larger farmers market, driving closer to Toronto to a really big market to see if that would increase your sales, or you really wanted to make sure that you stayed put in your community?
We wanted to stay put in our community, and we made a decision early on that we wanted to not spend a lot of time driving and delivering. Right. And we're a good, on the best of days, it's an hour and a half to drive from our farm to downtown Toronto, and there aren't any nice days like that. So to sell in an urban market in Toronto, there are lots of opportunities, and we got lots of calls, but it was going to be a really major commitment in terms of transportation time back and forth. So we just decided that wasn't what we wanted to do.
And then you found a really good partnership with a kind of a socially aware and real high integrity distributor, right?
Absolutely. We started working early on with a distributor called 100 Kilometer Foods, a couple who started their business at the same time we started ours, and they're a direct farm to restaurant distributor. And I don't think there are many companies like them in North America, and we're really lucky to have this company in Toronto, and they've grown and expanded. They're now selling to something like 400 restaurants. Wow. And picking up from dozens of farms. And we've really hitched our wagon to them and grown our businesses in tandem. So they were a great, not everyone has that opportunity or that outlet, but it was we really grabbed it when we saw it.
Nice. I know you had a couple of stories in the book about people trying to get your product for less, whether at the farmer's market or a chef complaining about the price, and you had some really good responses to that, to why they should pay the price that you were asking. Do you have like an elevator pitch that other farmers could use at a farmer's market to explain that?
Well, what we always try to do is explain to people that when they're buying our food, they're paying the whole cost of the food. We're not externalizing the costs onto the environment. We're not externalizing the costs onto our farm workers. We're also not passing those costs on to ourselves, so that we all know that there are lots and lots of farmers who are living basically in poverty because they can't get the prices they deserve for their products. So we just try to be as transparent as we can with our pricing, and to explain to our customers in the market or to our chef customers that when they're buying our food, they're paying the full price of the food. The cost of that food is not being borne by the environment or by our climate or by poorly paid farm workers. That we want to ensure that Gillian and I pay ourselves a fair wage. So we try not to apologize for our prices, and we also explain to people that when the food they're buying from us is unique. It's not something that can be substituted with anything you can find in the supermarket. It's higher quality, it's fresher, it's more nutritious. So most people, once we sort of explain why our price is what they are, they're understanding. And if they don't understand, then we let them know that they're free not to buy it. So
Well, and tasting it, I think they find out that there's a better value in it.
For sure. And we've had lots of experiences in the farmers market where people grumbled about the price, and we made a forceful defense, and then they came back the next week and bought it again, you know?
Yeah.
So that,
When they found out how much better it was. I mean, because so many farmers compromise on price, and then the end result is that the farmer doesn't get paid.
yeah, exactly, for sure. And the market that we sold in Creemore was a vendor-run market. And we were part of the committee that ran it after a few years. And we had a strict policy that at 12:30 all sales stopped and no one discounted the market. So you might get, instead of getting a few bucks for your last few bunches of carrots, everyone would trade. So all the vendors would trade with each other. And so we get, baked goods or whatever in lieu of, making a few dollars on a discounted sale at the end. But it allowed everyone to sort of keep their price
you're training
integrity.
your customers not to expect to come at the last minute and get a deal. We have some really terrific organizations in San Diego that pick up wasted food, and they keep wanting to come to the farmers markets that we run and pick up produce from farmers at the end of the market. And I keep saying farmers of all people are not the people that are able to support people having healthy food by donating. They need to support people having healthy food by growing, and then somebody else that's making a lot more money in some other industry needs to subsidize the farmers for providing that food to the people in food deserts and things. But farmers shouldn't be the ones bearing that. I think, in fact, in your TED Talk, you talk a little bit about the whole food waste thing, and then the problem maybe that we're growing too much food.
Yeah, I think that a few years ago I started to, as I looked at all of these different problems we have with our food system, it sort of started to dawn on me slowly that really the problem, one of the sort of underlying problem that connects all of these problems within our food system is that food is so cheap, and food is cheap because it's overabundant. We produce too much food and too much of the wrong kind of food. And food waste is a great example. I mean, people don't search through their fridge and find a lobster that they forgot about.
Yeah.
And say, "Oh, I'll ditch that because it's a week old." Food that's expensive and that we perceive as valuable does not get wasted. And I think you're right about the looking to farmers to solve the problem with food access and hunger. There's no room at all. No one could, in their right mind would think that we're going to solve the problem of people having access to food by farmers taking lower prices. Farmers are already taking a very small slice of the total cost of the food that people are purchasing in the supermarket, and reducing the amount farmers get is going to do nothing at all.
No, you're
to
going to end
solve
up with
the
less
problem.
people farming. I mean, they can't farm unless they can become financially sustainable. And lots of people do it for the lifestyle, I understand. But unless you can support yourself in that lifestyle, at some point you're going to not do it anymore. And then we're all going to be eating little green pills. It's a horrible plan.
Yeah.
Not a good future.
Brent, I'm curious. So it seems like the new farm is doing a lot of really cool events, and you're working with different food advocacy groups. Do you see this as an extension of the work that you did as a human rights advocate before you started the farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So before we were in Toronto, Gillian and I worked overseas for many years and worked in human rights and development all over the world. And we've always had that sort of activist streak to us in that background. And when we started farming, we realized that whether it was in the farmers market or the restaurants we sold to, that the big majority of our food was going to really wealthy people. And we needed to make dollar on our food, but we also wanted it to be accessible. So we started working with a number of progressive food organizations. Most importantly, a group called Community Food Centers Canada that really looks to solve the root causes of poverty and inequality through food. So we do on-farm fundraisers. We do an annual party every year where we have now up over 1,000 guests, and 15 great chefs cooking on the lawn, and then we have a band in the barn. And we did this year's version was in June, and we just tallied up all the results, and we sent a check for $130,000 to SEC. Yeah, from one night. That's, after paying all the expenses and everything else. So it's become a really powerful way to raise money and to raise awareness about inequality and access to healthy food.
Who on my team thinks we need a team building field trip to Canada next June?
Yes.
Actually, my husband and I were in Toronto the weekend before you had that event, and we had to end up his cousin was getting married in Buffalo, New York, and I was like, Dave, Broken Social Scene is playing at the new farm, like, let's just go there instead.
Can't your cousin push her wedding? Just another week.
Yeah, you should have come up with Feist joined the band, and she played one of her own songs at the end, and it was pretty amazing. It was great.
Dang it, I made the wrong decision. I'm just curious, can you tell us a little bit more about your events that you throw, and how do you get 1,000 people out there? I mean, besides having Broken Social...
Yeah.
Well, a few different things. Gillian's is the driving force behind our fundraising efforts in this big event, for sure. But we do a few things. First of all, we work with amazing chefs. Our customers are some of the best chefs in the country, some of the best chefs in North America. And they all volunteer their time. They love to come up and cook on the farm. So that's a huge draw for people. We had chefs from Mamafuku, from Cafe Balud, from all the top restaurants in Toronto cooking on our front lawn.
Wow.
And then we have great talent who wants to come and play in the barn. The bands also donate their time.
Wow.
But the word has gone around in the music community that they get fed really, really well. And there's a great vibe. So I think just this event has grown organically from year to year, and it's gotten bigger over time. But the overall vibe and the atmosphere is super positive and really fun. And then there's a lot of companies that want to attach their name to it now, so we get great sponsors. So that's where a lot of the money gets raised, is through sponsorships. And most of the sponsors do it because it gives them access to buy tickets, and they want to bring their friends to the party.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Well, maybe Intense Conference needs to sponsor next year so we can get some tickets.
Think about that. Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that we do this. It's all volunteer run, this fundraiser that we do, but it made us realize that there's this huge appetite for people to have experiences on farms.
Yeah.
And people really, really love it and want to come out and do those sorts of things. So we've actually built a little on-farm event space and commercial kitchen a couple of years ago that has become a pretty good revenue driver for our farm. And it's booked a lot. We're having something like 40 events this summer.
Wow.
In the space, and it's still not anything close to what we're selling in vegetables, but it's a good supplementary income stream. And there's a huge demand for people to come and do dinners and parties and corporate events and fundraisers and all sorts of things on the farm.
Yeah, we've had conversations recently with a farmer who added an event space and pumpkin patch and dinners on the farm and that kind of thing. And he was saying it's so funny that people will spend $40 or $80 or $200 for an experience on the farm, but they'll quibble with you about the price of a pumpkin or the price of your corn. So we're attuned to paying a lot for experience in North America, but not so much to paying for really good food, good honest food.
And that's how the farmers market is too.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, people come and they love to talk to the vendors, and they have a good time, and you share
Live
jokes,
music is there,
and they can bring their kids, and then they kind of want to haggle with you in price, but they forget that they're getting so much out of being able to buy directly from the person that made the item they're purchasing.
Yeah, that's an experience. Yeah.
For sure. And we found that we'd have some customers that would haggle about price in the market, but the vast majority wouldn't even look at our price board.
Right.
And they would hand over whatever total we told them. They didn't worry about the math or anything else. And I think that it's true what you're saying. People, experiences and stories and those kind of interactions are valuable. Whether it's at our restaurant clients tell us this when they can, because we often host restaurant staff up at the farm. They'll come up and cook or have a team building exercise or something on the farm. And when a server can go back and say, this salad came from this beautiful farm that we visited, those kind of stories are valuable. They're worth money. Whether it's in the farmer's market, the restaurant table, or on a farm, there are ways that we can monetize those kind of experiences and stories that can help our businesses.
Yeah, we tell our new farmers and vendors I know at the market all the time, like, you have to be personable with your customers. You have to tell them a story. If you're just standing in your booth and the price is just stuck on your jar of jam or whatever you're selling, that's not an experience. The customers might not feel like they're getting good value if they're paying for that. But if you're speaking with them and telling them, this is your grandma's recipe, or this is my dad's farm, and this is where the strawberries came from, that experience is worth that price, and people will pay for it. And that's how you stay in business. So it's really just connecting those dots, I think, for people that are at the market or selling to restaurants or whatever you're doing, connecting that experience to your actual goods. I think it's important to remember. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's also an opportunity to push the political side of our movement and explain to people why they should pay more for food and why it's important to buy direct from farmers.
Right.
Yeah.
What's different about the kind of food we're selling rather than the, chemical industrial stuff that you're finding in the supermarket. It's all an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Like telling them, getting in touch with their emotions about it, educating them, pulling on those heartstrings. That's all something that needs to happen in order for major change to happen. And so we need people like you. We need people that are speaking to the consumers about this to change our outlook and society's view on where food comes from and what the real value of it is.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like you're really, really busy and you have a million things going on. Can you tell us how exactly you ended up writing and how you have time to write and what led you to really, put this great information and these stories and education into a book that we're all really enjoy?
Well, it's the situation to build the movement. Gillian and I are really, as we've gotten more established as farmers, we've seen the importance of food system change and building community around good food. So the book was really an extension of those efforts to try to educate people and persuade people that a new kind of food system is possible. So the great thing about our farm is that, and especially farming in Canada, is that it's super seasonal, right? Like it's a challenge. I was in San Francisco last year and was in the farmers market in March and couldn't believe the kind of stuff that's available at that time of year when our farm is buried in snow. But the advantage of that is that we get some good downtime in the winter. Yeah. And so I had a good 2 or 3 years ago, I had a good chunk of time in the winter where I could sit down and devote myself to writing, and sort of hammered out the book in a winter. And it's sort of gone from there.
So we can kind of blame the year-round growing season on the reason that Kat hasn't written her book yet about managing farmers markets. Fault. That's what you can say. We have a year-round growing season. It can't be held accountable for that. So we don't have downtime very much here. So, but yeah, it sounds like that's a nice, time for reflecting and writing, and we're all grateful.
Analyzing your farm operations.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. So what do you see, or what would you like to see as the future of farming? Like what are you projecting, just because you have really a good viewpoint, I think, for where things are going, and what do you see as the next kind of evolution of farming?
Well, I think sometimes I'm really skeptical or really pessimistic, and I see a lot of agriculture moving in the wrong direction. Like there's a quote in the book from a organic egg farmer that we've known for years who said, he said to us at one point, what you're doing is exactly what should be happening, but the rest of agriculture is hurtling in the opposite direction as fast as it can. But I think that there's a real opportunity now for small scale organic local producers to create really viable businesses, and as the attitudes of consumers have changed and as people started to seek out this kind of food, it's created real economic opportunities, and that's the key, I think, to getting more farmers. So I'm not sure what will happen. What I hope will happen is that we have more and more small and medium scale farmers serving the local market, selling what they produce through really short supply chains, so either direct to consumers or through one intermediary, as we do through a distributor. I'm hopeful that there's a the public attitude and the economics are right to allow that to happen. But ultimately we're going to need some policy changes at the higher levels in order to really transform our food system.
And we have so much optimism right now here about that.
Yeah.
But
we just elected a provincial government a couple of weeks ago in Ontario that is shockingly similar to your national government down there. So it's tough everywhere, but we got to keep slugging, and hopefully over the long run we'll prevail.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Brent. So it's that time in our podcast where we ask our guest a question of the week, and so I heard, or I read in your book that you have a focus on growing things that sell and that your customers will buy and enjoy. And you suggested that farmers maybe stop selling stupid vegetables like kohlrabi. So this week our question is, what stupid vegetable have you discovered recently or learned to love?
And my question actually on that was, okay, so if all farmers give up stupid vegetables, are we going to just live on lettuce and tomatoes, people?
I've gotten a lot of flack from the kohlrabi lobby after that.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, some political kohlrabi activists show up at your farm.
Luckily, there isn't a really organized lobby for kohlrabi.
They would have such a clever name, though, if there was.
The lobby for kohlrabi, that's
The great thing about stupid vegetables is everyone has their own stupid vegetable. So you can not grow the one that you think is stupid, and someone else they'll grow it, and then everyone will be happy.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think my stupid vegetable is fennel. I can never understand those
you stole
little
my stupid
sucks.
vegetable.
Did I steal your
Yeah,
stupid
that's
vegetable?
okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I've always been a fennel hater. I'm allergic to bananas, and I hate the taste of anise and dried fennel and all those things. My family used to say they were going to torture me by getting me a fennel-covered banana for dessert. But I've actually discovered, amidst all that fluff and the flavor that's in dried things in sambuca and all of those licorice-y sort of tastes, that if you take the actual fennel and you braise it, it doesn't taste at all like that. It tastes like a really delightful vegetable. So my stupid vegetable that's no longer stupid to me would be fennel.
You've tackled it.
Yeah.
Sorry I jumped you,
That's
Justine.
okay. I'm
you have
sure
a
I
few.
can come up with another one.
All right, well, I'll go while you think of that. So when I moved to San Diego 6 years ago to work at the farmers markets, and got into eating all sorts of new stuff I had never really discovered before. I mean, including like heirloom tomatoes and stuff that just seems so like basic now that everyone eats, and it's here. I came from Phoenix, so there wasn't a lot available at the farmers markets there. But I really got into beets. And at first I thought they were kind of terrible. And then, every farmer grows beets. The farmers all told me they're really easy to grow. They just bring them no matter what. And, sometimes they sell and sometimes they don't, but they're like, it's not a big deal. We just grow them and we bring them. And there's a farmer that we have now, and he sells golden beets and like candy cane striped beets. So they're really pretty. So I got really into them. And then beets became like really trendy, and everyone was putting them in their salads at restaurants, and there's beet juice, and I got into that. And then I just got sick of it, and now I think they're stupid again.
So now beets are stupid.
Yes.
Well, okay, I have a redemption story of a post-stupid vegetable. I used to really not like eggplant at all, and I thought they were stupid. But then I realized I was buying overly ripe eggplant, and it was all like...
Kind of brown and seedy.
Yeah, all brown and seedy, and then I just looked up one day, how do you know when an eggplant is ripe? And now I would only buy them at a farmer's market. No, but, so I no longer think they're stupid.
There you go.
See,
all
you
right.
can learn to
You still
love
think
things.
parsnips are stupid, though, Brent, right?
Yeah, parsnips are stupid, but I'm exactly the same way with fennel. I hate anything that tastes like licorice, and but I love fennel bulbs. So, like sautéed or roasted in the fall. I think there's a whole bunch of vegetables that lots of people don't like because they've only eaten the industrial version.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is beets or eggplant and all the things you're mentioning. The industrial version just tastes bad, and it's lovely to see the sort of the change come over people, especially in the farmers market, when they discover that a vegetable they've always hated is actually delicious when it's grown, in healthy soil with a lot of love.
Yeah, and prepared right.
That's how I am with tomatoes too. I'll seriously at the farmer's market just like bite into it like an apple, and the thought of doing that years ago, like at the grocery store, would just be disgusting.
Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah. A whole new thing.
All right. Well, Brent, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And we are so incredibly excited to have you at Intense Conference 2019.
Yeah, I was just thinking we could probably talk to you for about 4 hours today, but we can just
We can do
wait.
that in February.
And we can do it in February when you're here, because I want to hear more about everything that you've talked about. So we're really excited to have you.
Well, I'm very, very excited to be coming down and look forward to meeting you all in person.
Great.
Excellent.
All
Thanks,
right.
Brent.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening along. Please leave us a review on iTunes and tell us how you liked today's episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss our next episode. And if you want more farmers market tips, you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter at intensebusiness.com and follow us on Instagram at intensebusiness. That's INTENTS business. The 2019 Intense Conference will be held in San Diego, February 24th through 26th. If you want to bring your whole team, don't miss our Early Bird Threes Company special that ends this week on September 1st.
This podcast is produced by Intense Business, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni Mead. Original music by David Mead. Special thanks to our guests Brent Preston and San Diego Markets.